Hello and welcome to the CX Files for April 30th, 2026. My name's Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, great to catch up. And wow, just one more day until May. Whew,
Yeah,
who'd have thought
yeah,
it?
absolutely. This year is flying, isn't it?
Yep.
I mean, it feels like yesterday that we were hanging out in London at the 400th episode live recording.
I agree. It does feel like yesterday. Time is legitimately going by far too quickly, but at the same time, it's been a great year so far. So no complaints from my side.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've got an interesting guest this week, a good friend of both of ours, Nathan Muniz, who yeah, I know that you've seen him several times at your
Yeah.
CXO events, and we always try to catch up with him where it's possible. I enjoyed a bus ride around Glasgow in Scotland, sitting next to Nathan when there was the CXO up in Scotland. So we've got lots of good memories from that time.
Oh yeah, Nathan is one of the best, and as you say, he is a very good friend to the podcast. He's a previous guest. I've had many catch-ups with Nathan around the world. I can recall an Atlanta Braves baseball game back in 2024 when, needless to say, the sun was out and so were the beers.
Yeah.
Equally, there are multiple times I've been in Manila, and Nathan has been in Manila at the same time, and we've caught up. He knows some great places to go hang out. But it was interesting that you caught up with him, Mark. As I mentioned a few seconds ago, Nathan has been a guest on the pod before. What were you chatting about this time?
Well, previously you'd been talking about how his company's 24/7 secretary, and
Yeah.
they'd had a remarkable influence on a local region in the Philippines because Nathan chose to set up his company away from the city. So rather than all of the employees commuting into the city, they could just go to their local office, walking.
Yeah.
So you know, and he found that it was regenerating the local area and spinning off loads of local businesses. But one thing that I also noticed about what Nathan has been doing in the past few years is just constantly posting videos on LinkedIn directly from the contact center, where quite often he just picks up his phone and records somebody at work and asks them, what call did you just have with a customer? What was particularly interesting or what was difficult about it? And he just posts this stuff online. So it seemed that he was almost sort of doing a kind of guerrilla marketing campaign with almost zero budget, but it seemed highly
Hmm.
effective because he was
Yeah.
getting loads and loads of engagement. People are commenting on this stuff. And so I just called him up to ask him, is there a grand strategy to this? Or is there's some other sort of driver behind it? And
Hmm.
what came out of the conversation that I thought was really interesting was a lot of stuff to do with AI, which, you
Hmm.
wouldn't sort of immediately think of it. But he said that quite often in the last few months, he's getting calls from people saying, um, can you quote us for a
Hmm.
project?
Hmm.
And then he says, well, how did you even hear about us? He hasn't been doing any kind of active lead generation with this business, and yet they're phoning up and asking for a contract. And they're always turning around and saying, well, we were talking to ChatGPT about companies that are specialized in this area, and your company comes recommended. And
Hmm.
so,
Hmm.
so it's an incredible thing. And I said to Nathan, I mean, I think that the only way that it would understand about his business is the fact that he keeps posting all these videos
Yeah.
showing exactly what his business is doing, exactly the experience of the agents, and so he's kind of demonstrating just by publishing all this stuff. So this was a really interesting conversation about if you're transparent and you show some sort of genuine authenticity, it actually helps to teach these AI engines what you're doing much better than kind of glossy marketing videos, that with where
Yeah.
you've hired actors to be in the video and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that Nathan's onto something here. Visibility is important, but there's something else too, authenticity. And the glossy videos are fine once or twice, but the reality is, you've seen a couple people will just desist. They just won't keep watching because they'll have an idea what's going to happen. With Nathan, there's always something new to learn. There's always something new to catch on to. So I'm excited to hear a little bit more, Mark. So I'm going to recommend that we listen to the chat that you had with our good pal Nathan Muniz and enlighten us a little bit about what his secret sauce is.
Hey Nathan, it's about 3 years since you were last on the CX files. Apart from your Happy New Year message, which was more recently, but given that it's been a few years, maybe you could take a moment to reintroduce yourself and your business again.
Sure. Thanks, Mark. My name's Nathan Muniz. I'm the owner of 24/7 Secretary. We are a BPO and contact center located in the Philippines. And I'm actually in our contact center right now. So you might hear some background noise. I'm sorry about that. But hey, I'm here at work.
Well, and that's absolutely why I wanted to talk to you, because one thing that's different about you and the way that you present your business is that you're always letting people see, like, behind the curtain, under the hood. You're doing this right now, sitting in your contact center. You're always posting videos online, talking to your employees, or just showing how the business works. I mean, is there some sort of grand comms strategy here, or you just like showing how your business works?
A little bit of both, actually. And the key here is we're an offshore BPO. We're located in a foreign country, and we're selling services to mostly people in the United States and the UK. So I think you really have to show your legitimacy when you're 9,000 miles away from your client, let alone their customers as well. So there's a lot that you have to prove when you don't have a huge marketing budget, you don't have a huge name in the industry like some of the big players that are located here in the Philippines. We don't have a skyscraper in downtown Makati. So any little bit to show that we know what we're doing and we know how to operate, I like to display that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, because I was thinking about this as we were, going to plan to talk about this. But it seems that transparency really does seem to be important today. And I think that maybe that plays into what you're saying about the fact that you're so far away. If you're not transparent, it's easy to hide stuff. And everyone right now has suddenly become an expert in AI, and the industry is just filled with jargon, and everybody is suddenly an expert on something they knew nothing about 2 years ago. I mean, is that really what your approach is about? Just saying, look, there's nothing to hide here. We don't need a load of jargon to hide what we're doing. This is what we're doing. We're dealing with customers, and we're happy to show you exactly what we're doing.
Well, I also think that jumping in, there's almost three types, I mean, maybe even more types of BPOs. I mean, there's the massively huge BPOs that I spoke of just a minute ago. Then there's smaller players. And I think when you're smaller, you have different, you are approaching different types of clients. We're normally not approaching the enterprise level Fortune 500 company. We're going with smaller operations, and they're not really taking the AI pill. They want classic BPO services with a little bit of industry specific AI. Well, they're not full on looking for the automated agent. They don't have the budgets for that. So a lot of our clients we don't even talk about AI as far as, doing what the agent is doing. AI might assist the agent, and I'm very reluctant to suggest or tell them my ideas on AI because these aren't my companies. I'm here to just provide the agent, and we can go over training, and we can go over new implementation. But really, at this point, I'm following the lead to the client still. And I think when you get to the large scale operations, yes, they're more in tune with the AI tools that's going to save their company tens of millions of dollars, allegedly. We're still on the classic support service. I mean, I just haven't seen the magical program that's came into the wavelength of it's going to just solve everything, destroy everything, and cure everything. I haven't seen that product yet.
Yeah.
So in our neck of the woods and in our size, we're still providing the classic services.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm interested in how the buyers are using AI because, like people like Forrester are saying that instead of using analyst reports and stuff like that, a lot of buyers are starting on their journey by going to Claude or ChatGPT and saying, who would be a great provider in this area or who's got this kind of expertise. I mean, has this sort of change in the way people search for information changed how people get in touch with you?
Yes, it has. And I found that out recently from some leads that just magically came in and booked appointments. I mean, we haven't really been aggressive in lead generation as we have been in the last few years. And the last couple of leads that came in sporadically came from ChatGPT. And we're in the NEMT dispatch industry. That is a niche that we cover, and I think I've made enough content about it on LinkedIn that it has trickled over to ChatGPT, and a last couple of clients that we've had calls that we've even landed came from what you just said, searching for a good NEMT dispatch provider.
Yeah, 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 and I think that that's an interesting point, and stuff like this podcast is great for this as well because I've certainly had guests on here before, and we'll talk about a fairly niche CX subject. If you can go to ChatGPT the day after the CX files comes out, and if you ask about that subject, it quite often will say, "Go and listen to this podcast," because that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't pay an AdWords subscription, to get on the AI platforms. It just magically, and I think it all circles around good content to where,
Yeah,
I've interviewed agents before that do this specific type of work. Therefore, the powers that be mix together and know that we have capable people that provide this type of service.
yeah, I think that that's a good point. That having an original opinion and talking about genuine kind of business experience is probably what is picked up. Because if you hired an intern to sit there using ChatGPT to just churn out articles, I very much doubt that would move the dial.
I think a lot has been gained just from interviewing agents, asking what they do, and then
Yeah,
asking about some of the calls that they've had and how they've handled it.
yeah,
And I just think that shows the company's capable and the
mm,
agents are well trained and capable as well, which that's what we provide. That's our number one service,
yeah.
is somebody knowing what they're doing on the other end of that call.
I suppose that what we're talking about is that there's some sort of confusion because the AI engines are like a black box. We don't exactly know how we're training them, other than if we put original insight and information out there, we're kind of assuming that's how it learns. Whereas in the old days, you'd pick up clients from either you'd be at events and you'd talk to people, or they might see a Gartner report that says, here's an up and coming BPO you should be talking to. I mean, at least we knew where the information was coming from. Is there a danger in what we're doing now, in that we're kind of seeing that original insight and this information we're pushing out there is valuable, but we don't quite know how it's getting from you to the prospect, really?
I mean, I think anytime, especially right now, you're solely relying on one information source is always going to be a danger. A lot of people do a little bit more due diligence than just ChatGPT to see who they're going to. I know that actually maybe they don't. I don't know, but
Yeah,
I'd like to think somebody's going to do a little more diligence than GPT, and that might start the conversation,
yeah,
and then continue. But the danger, I think, is when you aren't able to investigate for yourself, and you're not able to go through people need to go through the classic channels. They need to
Yeah.
ask industry colleagues and hey, have you heard of this company? Have you done business with them? Well, what's your experience like? To me, that's still a great source of information. So
Yeah.
the danger is not just relying on AI, but only relying on one piece of investigative information.
Yeah. 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 And I guess, yeah, that would be exactly the same if you just relied on one single analyst report, because, ultimately you don't know if it might have been sponsored, so who knows?
And a lot of those are.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've talked about the big guys are where a lot of the change is happening right now. But the whole industry is in a real, like, quite a rapid period of embracing self-service, AI, automation. When you see this kind of rapid industry change, does that give some advantage to smaller players? Are you able to just kind of like turn on a dime and rapidly adopt some new service for your customer? Whereas, a big player out there with 500,000 agents would never be able to do that. It's like turning a battleship.
That's a great question. And I think if you're capable of learning about new verticals and then maybe, not putting the cart before the horse and actually doing the proper training in that vertical, and then going to the client with trained agents, I think that is the future for a smaller operator like we are, is to
Mm-hmm.
have agents who know certain types of CRMs, know certain types of software ahead of time.
Mm.
If there is AI that's implemented in that software, we already know how to use it. Then,
Yeah.
therefore, when we go to the client, we say, hey, look, I already have an agent that knows how to do this.
Mm.
Yes, we're going to have to study your protocol. Yes, we're going to have to study how you do it, but we have the blocking and tackling covered.
Yeah.
I think that is a good approach for a smaller player,
Yeah.
because you're offering just something a lot more ready to go than
Yeah.
a lot of other people.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's really interesting because a lot of the conversation, like the industry analyst level conversation, is all about the replacement of agents with agentic AI. And yet, from what you're saying, there's still a hell of a lot of people, picking up the phone and answering customers.
There's still a lot of clients that only want that. They don't
Mm.
want AI coming in the mix. I mean, a
Yeah.
little bit.
Mm.
It's just not. I think we were all mystified
Mm.
by just, there's a lot going on in the world. I mean, you've got some key players of influence that I don't even know the guy's name. I should, but it's the guy who
Mm.
wears the leather, the CEO of NVIDIA. You see him all the time telling you how AI is going to take over the world. Elon
Yeah.
Musk's telling you the same thing. These guys have a lot of airtime where they're
Mm.
letting us know that we're in some sort of danger. I
Yeah.
just think that really has hit the BPO industry hard, is that type of influence.
Yeah.
Sam Altman, these
Mm.
people, they're selling their products. These are peddlers, if you think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
And it's working.
Mm.
Some people are terrified. Some companies are spending millions and millions of dollars to either get in on it or fight against it. I mean,
Mm.
this strategy of making us all think that AI is taking over is definitely worked.
Yeah. 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 I mean, finally, then, to wrap up, I mean, what tips would you give then? Because, clearly you've either taken some comms advice or you just naturally have a great way of presenting the business. I mean, if you were talking to like a sales guy or a senior exec, and they really want to tell the industry about what their business is doing, what would you say? What would you say that like the first steps?
I realized this kind of later in the game, that as a business owner and a hands-on business operator, I'm privileged when it comes to content. I mean, I could have made 4 content videos today before lunch about operations, what decisions were made, what bills were paid and what investments we're going to make in the future. So I think anyone who has operational control and has that privilege to be involved, they need to be making content about that, showing people what they're doing, telling people what they're doing. That solidifies your knowledge. I know a lot of companies like to keep things private. They don't want anyone knowing what's going on. But if you've got your finger on the pulse and you're making all these decisions and you're building something, I think it's best to just let people know what you're doing. Show that, hey, I'm doing this. This is what we're doing today. Take a look.
Yeah. And
so
I
that's
think
what I would say. I'm sorry, but I would just say anything you do that's unique as far as your operation, show it. That's
exactly what I was going to say, because like listening to you, you're saying, tell people what you're actually really doing in your business, because that's what's going to interest all of those AI engines, rather than if you put out glossy, slick videos and you hire some actors to appear in them. That stuff just gets ignored anyway.
Well, here's let's start off at square one. If I see your name and I see your company and I still don't know what you do, that's like 3 strikes against you, almost 2 strikes against you already. So to start things off with, people should just present themselves on LinkedIn or other social media platforms. My name is this. I do this for this company.
Yeah.
Start off there and then continue. So if people don't know how many people do you see with the glossy stuff and you still don't know what they do?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Nathan, that's a great insight. We started off and finished talking about how to represent the business with a detour into AI as well. But that was a great conversation. Thanks very much.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.